The grand ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and white roses. It was the perfect backdrop for my cousin Miranda's fairy tale wedding. I adjusted my simple black dress, a classic piece I'd bought online for $30, and tried to blend into the elegant crowd of 200 guests. At 28, I was the family disappointment, sitting at table 12, far from the action, surrounded by distant relatives who barely remembered my name. My father, David Kellerman, stood near the bar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, holding court with a group of wedding guests. As the successful owner of 3 luxury car dealerships, he commanded attention wherever he went. His voice carried across the room as he gestured toward me with his whiskey glass. "That's my youngest daughter, Sophia," he said, his tone mixing pride with disappointment. "She serves coffee for minimum wage at some little cafe downtown. Such a bright girl, full of potential." But he shrugged eloquently. "You know how it is with this generation. No ambition, no drive to succeed in the real world." The wedding guests nodded sympathetically, their eyes flicking toward me with that particular mixture of pity and judgment I'd grown accustomed to over the past 5 years. My sister Victoria, resplendent in her designer gown, joined the conversation from across the room. "We keep telling her to apply for real jobs," Victoria added, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd married into pharmaceutical money. "With her college degree, she could work anywhere, but she insists on this artistic phase." My stepmother, Linda, Dad's third wife, nodded gravely. "It's so hard watching someone waste their potential. We've offered to help her find positions at proper companies, but she's just so stubborn." I sipped my water, couldn't afford the wine at these prices, and they all knew it, and let their words wash over me. 5 years of this, 5 years of family gatherings where I was the cautionary tale, the daughter who'd chosen dreams over security, passion over practicality. If they only knew. My phone buzzed quietly against my purse. A text from my agent, Marcus Reynolds. Disney just confirmed the trilogy deal. $45 million for 3 films. Congratulations, superstar. I slipped the phone back into my purse and smiled slightly. Tonight was going to be interesting. The wedding ceremony had been beautiful, but dinner was where the real family dynamics emerged. I found myself seated between Great Aunt Dorothy, who kept asking if I was still single because of my choices, and my cousin Blake, a junior investment banker who'd spent the entire salad course explaining why the entertainment industry was financially unstable. "The problem with creative fields," Blake said, cutting into his filet mignon, "is there's no guaranteed income, no security, no growth potential. That's why successful people choose traditional careers." I nodded politely, thinking about the voiceover session I completed yesterday for Netflix's biggest animated series. 3 hours of work that would net me more than Blake made in 6 months. But I kept that information to myself. Dad approached our table during the main course, his face flushed with whiskey and the satisfaction of being the center of attention. "How's everyone enjoying the evening?" he asked, his eyes deliberately avoiding mine. "Wonderful wedding," Great Aunt Dorothy replied. "Though I was just telling Sophia here that she really should consider settling down soon. Time's ticking, and with her situation, she can't afford to be too picky." "Her situation," Dad repeated, settling into an empty chair. "Yes, well, we all make choices in life. Some of us choose responsibility and success." He gestured vaguely in my direction. "Others choose to serve lattes to college students." The nearby tables had gone quiet, sensing drama. I could feel eyes turning toward us, wedding guests curious about the family tension unfolding over dessert. "David," my stepmother Linda warned softly, "perhaps this isn't the time." "No, no," Dad waved her off. "Sophia needs to hear this. She's 28 years old, living in a studio apartment, working for minimum wage. When I was her age, I already owned my first dealership." He turned to the gathering crowd. "Do you know what she told me last month? She said she was building something big." "Building what? A pyramid of coffee cups?" The laughter was polite but pointed. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the familiar frustration of being so thoroughly misunderstood by the people who should know me best. "The entertainment industry is just so unreliable," Victoria added, joining the conversation with her husband, Trevor. "We've been trying to help her see reason for years. There are pharmaceutical companies that would love to have someone with her education. Real companies with real futures." Speaking of entertainment, Miranda, the bride, called out from the head table. "Has everyone seen Mystic Realms on Netflix? It's incredible." She held up her phone, scrolling through the app. "The voice acting is absolutely phenomenal, especially Luna. She's the main character. The actress who voices her is supposed to be worth, like, $50 million or something crazy." The conversation paused as Miranda clicked play on her phone. The opening theme of Mystic Realms filled the immediate area. And then came the voice that had made me a millionaire dozens of times over. My voice as Luna, the fierce warrior princess who'd captured hearts worldwide, in the shadows of ancient mountains, where magic flows like rivers of light. Great Aunt Dorothy frowned. "That voice sounds familiar." Blake cocked his head. "Yeah, weirdly familiar." Miranda kept scrolling, pulling up behind-the-scenes footage from the series. "The actress is super secretive about her identity, but she's done, like, 15 major animated series and movies. She's basically the most successful voice actress in the world right now." As Luna's voice continued from the phone, my voice, speaking words I'd recorded in a Manhattan studio just 2 months ago, I watched my family's faces with growing amusement. Dad was still talking about my minimum wage job, completely oblivious to the irony unfolding around him. "The problem with Sophia," he continued, "is that she lacks focus. She lacks the killer instinct you need to succeed in business. She's content to remain small, to play it safe." That's when Miranda's eyes went wide. She'd been staring at me while Luna spoke, and something had clicked. "Wait," she said slowly, her voice cutting through Dad's monologue. "Wait a minute." She held up her phone, replaying Luna's dialogue, then looked directly at me. "Say something," she whispered. The tables around us had gone completely silent. I glanced at Dad, who was looking confused by the sudden shift in attention. "Say what?" I asked in my normal speaking voice. Miranda's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" She fumbled with her phone, pulling up more clips. "Say, in the shadows of ancient mountains." I looked around at the circle of faces, my family, the wedding guests, all staring at me with varying degrees of confusion and anticipation. "In the shadows of ancient mountains," I repeated, this time letting my voice carry the full power and resonance I used professionally. The silence that followed was absolute. Miranda dropped her phone. "You're Luna. You are the Luna." She scrambled for her phone, pulling up article after article. "Sophia, you're worth $50 million. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Dad's whiskey glass stopped, halfway to his lips. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. Blake's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That's impossible," Dad said finally, his voice hollow. "She works at a coffee shop." "Part-time," I corrected quietly. "I work at the coffee shop part-time because I enjoy it, not because I need to." Miranda was scrolling frantically through her phone. "Netflix just announced a spin-off series starring Luna. The article says the voice actress signed a 3-season deal worth $25 million. She looked up at me, eyes shining with disbelief. "That was you." I pulled out my own phone, opening my banking app and turning the screen toward them. The balance showing made Great Aunt Dorothy actually gasp. "But how?" Victoria stammered. "When would we have known? Would you?" I asked gently. "You spent 5 years telling me my dreams were worthless without once asking what I was actually building." Dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is some kind of joke. Voice acting isn't. You can't make that kind of money just talking into a microphone." I opened another app on my phone, showing my agent's contact and recent messages. "Marcus Reynolds, CA. He's been my agent for 4 years now." I scrolled through recent texts. "Here's the confirmation for the Disney trilogy deal. $45 million for 3 films. And here's the Universal contract for the Cosmic Defenders franchise. $37 million over 5 years. The numbers were staggering, even to me sometimes, but they were real. Earned through years of 16-hour recording sessions, vocal training, character development, and building relationships with directors who trusted me to bring their visions to life. "This can't be real," Linda whispered, staring at my phone screen. Blake, ever the financial analyst, leaned forward. "Those contracts? Are those actually real?" "Yes." I closed my phone and looked around the table. "For the past 5 years, while you've been worrying about my career choices, I've been working. Really working. Not just the coffee shop, that's my side gig because I love the community and the regularity. My real work happens in recording studios in Los Angeles, New York, and London. But we never see you traveling," Victoria protested. "We never see any signs of this success. Because I choose not to flaunt it." I gestured around the opulent ballroom. "I drive a Honda Civic because it's reliable and environmentally responsible. I live in a studio apartment because it's close to the coffee shop and I don't need much space. I dress simply because expensive clothes don't make me better at my job." Dad sank back into his chair, his entire worldview clearly shifting. "Luna," he repeated slowly. "You're actually Luna." Miranda was still scrolling through articles on her phone. "She's won 4 Emmy Awards for voice acting. And look, here's an interview where they call her the Meryl Streep of animation." I smiled at that one. The comparison had embarrassed me when I first read it, but I'd grown to appreciate the respect it represented. "The coffee shop," Dad said suddenly. "You said it was part-time. 3 days a week, morning shifts. I own it, actually. Bought it 2 years ago when the previous owner was going to close down. The staff doesn't know. They think I'm just another employee. But I couldn't let the neighborhood lose its heart." Great Aunt Dorothy, who'd been silent through the revelations, finally spoke. "You own a business, too?" "Several, actually. The coffee shop, a recording studio in Nashville, and a percentage of the animation house that produces Mystic Realms, plus various investments." I paused, looking around the table. "I'm what you might call financially secure." Blake, his banker instincts kicking in, asked, "How secure are we talking?" I considered how much to reveal. Forbes estimated my net worth at $87 million last year, but that was before the Disney deal. The silence that followed stretched so long I could hear the jazz quartet playing on the other side of the ballroom. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. $87 million, give or take." I stood up, smoothing my $30 dress. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I promised Miranda I'd catch her bouquet toss." As I walked away from the table, I could hear the whispered conversation starting behind me. Phone screens lit up as people Googled my professional name, searching for the articles and interviews they'd never bothered to look for before. The bouquet toss was delightfully normal after the drama of dinner. I caught Miranda's roses, a good omen, she insisted, and spent the next hour being congratulated by wedding guests who suddenly found me fascinating. Everyone wanted to know about Luna, about the recording process, about working with famous directors. It was during the dancing that Dad finally approached me. He looked older somehow, as if the evening had aged him years and hours. "Sophia," he began, then stopped. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, Dad." "Yes, I do." He ran his hand through his graying hair. I've been such an ass. All those things I said tonight, all the times I've dismissed what you were doing." I watched couples swaying to the slow jazz number, thinking about all the family gatherings where I had sat quietly while being lectured about my life choices. "You know what the hardest part was?" I said finally. "Not the secrecy, not even the judgment. It was that none of you ever asked. Not once in 5 years did anyone ask what I was really working on, what my dreams actually looked like, whether I was happy." He flinched. "We thought we were helping. We thought you were wasting your potential." "My potential for what? For being like you? For measuring success only in traditional terms?" I turned to face him fully. "Dad, I love what I do. I bring characters to life that inspire millions of children. I make enough money to support myself and others. I'm building something meaningful. Isn't that success?" Before he could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized, my Disney contact. "Sorry, I should take this," I told Dad, answering the call. "Sophia, it's Jennifer from Disney Animation," came the familiar voice. "I know you're at a family event, but I had to call. The Luna spin-off series just got greenlit for a second season before the first one even airs. The network wants to discuss expanding your role across the entire Disney animated universe." I stepped away from the dance floor, trying to process what she was saying. "Expanding how?" "Think Marvel Cinematic Universe, but animated. Luna would be the connecting thread across multiple series and films. We're talking about a 10-year plan, potentially worth." She paused. "Well, let's just say it would be the largest voice acting contract in entertainment history." "How large are we talking?" $200 million over 10 years, plus back-end percentages. I nearly dropped the phone. $200 million. The number was so large it almost seemed abstract. "I know it's a lot to process," Jennifer continued, "but we need to know if you're interested in principle. Your agent will have the details Monday morning." Yes. Yes, I'm interested." "Fantastic. Oh, and Sophia, congratulations on the trilogy deal announcement. The industry's buzzing about it. You've really made it." After hanging up, I stood there for a moment, watching my family through the ballroom windows. Dad was talking animatedly to Victoria and Trevor, probably filling them in on the evening's revelations. Great Aunt Dorothy was showing other relatives something on her phone, likely articles about Luna. $200 million. The sum was almost incomprehensible, but what struck me more was Jennifer's final comment. "You've really made it." I'd made it 5 years ago when I'd booked my first major series. I'd made it when children started recognizing Luna's voice in toy stores and theme parks. I'd made it when parents wrote to thank me for creating a character their daughters could look up to. The money was validation, but it wasn't the real measure of success. I walked back into the ballroom as the band started playing a slow number. Miranda grabbed my arm as I passed. "I can't believe my cousin is Luna," she whispered, grinning. "This is, like, the best wedding surprise ever. Will you sign something for me?" I laughed, hugging her. "Of course, but it stays between us for now, okay? I like my privacy." "Deal. But Sophia, why didn't you ever tell anyone?" "I mean, we're family." I looked across the room at Dad, who was now listening intently as Blake apparently explained something about entertainment industry investments. Victoria was Googling something on her phone, while Linda showed Great Aunt Dorothy pictures of Luna merchandise. "Because," I said to Miranda, "I needed to know who I was before I could share that with anyone else." And I needed to be sure they'd love me for who I am, not what I'm worth. The evening wound down with a series of awkward but heartfelt conversations. Victoria apologized for dismissing my choices, admitting she'd always been jealous of my courage to follow unconventional paths. Blake asked if I needed investment advice, then spent 20 minutes picking my brain about entertainment industry economics. Even Linda, who'd never shown much interest in me before, wanted to know about the creative process behind character development. But it was great Aunt Dorothy who surprised me most. As the reception was ending, she pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology, dear," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I spent the evening worried about your future when you'd already built one beyond any of our imaginations." "You don't need to apologize, Aunt Dorothy." "Yes, I do. And I need to tell you something else." She glanced around, then leaned closer. 40 years ago, I wanted to be a singer. Had the voice for it, too, according to my teachers. But everyone said it wasn't practical, wasn't stable, so I became a secretary instead. She paused, looking out at the dance floor where the last few couples were swaying to the final song. "I spent 40 years wondering what might have been. And tonight, watching you, you did what I was too scared to do. You followed your dreams and made them real." As the evening finally ended, I found myself in the hotel lobby with Dad. The valet had brought around his Mercedes and my Honda Civic. The contrast was as stark as it had always been, but somehow different now. "Sophia," he said as we waited, "I want you to know I'm proud of you. Not because of the money, but because of your courage. Because you knew who you were when the rest of us didn't." "Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know. I also want you to know that I'm going to do better. We all are. No more assumptions, no more lectures about your choices. I want to learn about your world if you'll let me." I smiled, thinking about the Disney deal that would reshape not just my career, but potentially my entire life. "I'd like that. Maybe you could come to a recording session sometime. See what I actually do for a living. I'd love that." He paused as the valet approached with his keys. "Oh, and Sophia, next family gathering? You're sitting at the head table." As I drove home in my practical Honda Civic, my phone buzzed with text messages from relatives who'd looked up my work online. Photos of Luna merchandise, articles about upcoming projects, congratulations, questions, and invitations to coffee. But the message that made me smile came from Miranda. "Thank you for making my wedding unforgettable. Also, my little niece says Luna is her hero. I can't wait to tell her that her hero is my cousin." I pulled into my modest apartment complex, thinking about the choices that had led me here. The studio apartment I'd chosen for its simplicity. The coffee shop I'd bought to preserve community. The career I'd built by trusting my own vision of success. Tomorrow, I'd call my agent about the Disney deal. I'd probably need to hire more financial advisors, maybe consider upgrading my living situation for security reasons. The practical side of success would require attention. But tonight, I was content to be exactly where I was, in my simple apartment, surrounded by the life I'd chosen, having finally shared my truth with the people who mattered most. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. And as Luna's voice echoed from someone's Netflix account in a neighboring apartment, my voice, bringing magic to another family's evening, I knew I'd done exactly that. 3 months later, I stood on the red carpet at the premiere of Mystic Realms, Lunar Rising, the feature film that had launched from the series' success. Dad was my date, looking proud in his tuxedo as photographers called my name. "You know," he said as we posed for pictures, "I always knew you were destined for something special." I laughed, squeezing his arm. "No, you didn't. But that's okay. I did, and that," I realized, "was enough."